There was a time when installing Linux felt like joining a secret society. You had to know someone who knew someone. You had to burn an ISO, pray your Wi-Fi card was supported, memorize strange commands, and accept that things would break. It felt powerful, yes, but it also felt exclusive. Meanwhile, Windows sat comfortably on store shelves and pre-installed on nearly every laptop in sight. It was familiar. It was easy. It was the default. For decades, that was the unshakable advantage Windows had. But something has changed, and it's happening faster than most people realize. Linux is becoming too easy. And when Linux becomes easy, the Windows advantage disappears. Think back to what switching to Linux used to mean. It meant risk. It meant giving up your games. It meant hunting for drivers. It meant explaining to your friends why your screen looked different. It meant becoming the tech person whether you wanted to or not. The barrier to entry was high, and in many ways, that barrier protected Windows. Most people simply didn't want to deal with the friction. Convenience always wins in the mainstream market, but Linux developers understood that. Over the past decade, they've chipped away at every single point of friction. Installation is no longer an obstacle. Modern Linux distributions boot into polished live environments that feel like complete operating systems before you even click install. You test everything first. Wi-Fi works, Bluetooth works, your trackpad gestures work. Then you click a friendly install button and answer a few simple questions. Time zone, username, password. That's it. In many cases, it's actually faster than setting up a new Windows machine, which now demands Microsoft accounts, cloud syncing decisions, telemetry permissions, and endless prompts about subscriptions. The irony is almost poetic. The system once known for simplicity now feels crowded, while the system once known for complexity feels streamlined. And it's not just installation. Hardware support has quietly become one of Linux's strongest assets. The Linux kernel has matured into an incredibly adaptable engine that powers everything from smartphones to supercomputers. Manufacturers increasingly contribute drivers upstream because Linux is everywhere. When you install a modern distribution, chances are your graphics card, sound system, and network adapters are recognized instantly. Even NVIDIA support, once a major pain point, has improved dramatically with better driver integration and tools that simplify installation. For the average user, the days of compiling modules and editing configuration files are fading into history. Then there's the desktop experience. Linux desktops used to feel like science projects. They were customizable, yes, but often inconsistent and sometimes unstable. Today's environments are refined and cohesive. They are designed with real usability in mind. Animations are smooth. Settings menus are organized. App stores are visual and searchable. You don't need to touch the terminal if you don't want to. And that's the key phrase, if you don't want to. The power is still there for those who crave it, but it's no longer mandatory for basic survival. Software availability was once Windows' strongest weapon. If you needed a particular program, Windows had it. Linux often didn't. But the rise of web applications has completely shifted that landscape. Most people spend the majority of their time in a browser. Email, documents, streaming, communication, project management, social media, design tools, so much of it runs online now. If it runs in a browser, it runs on Linux. The operating system matters less when your workflow lives in the cloud. Windows dominance was built in a world of desktop-bound software. We're no longer in that world. Gaming was another fortress. For years, the phrase Linux gaming sounded like an oxymoron. But then came a quiet revolution. Compatibility layers evolved. Graphics drivers matured. Platforms invested in making Linux viable. Suddenly, thousands of Windows games became playable on Linux with a single click. Performance gaps shrank. Anti-cheat systems began to support Linux environments. Entire gaming-focused distributions emerged, optimized out of the box. The narrative shifted from "you can't game on Linux" to "why wouldn't you try?" When one of the last emotional reasons to stick with Windows weakens, people start reconsidering their loyalty. User interface familiarity used to anchor people to Windows. They were used to the Start menu, the taskbar, the File Explorer, but Linux desktops learned from that familiarity instead of rejecting it. Many distributions now offer layouts that feel instantly recognizable to Windows users. You can have a bottom panel, a system tray, a launcher menu, and window controls exactly where you expect them. The transition shock has been minimized. You don't feel lost. You feel slightly different, but comfortable. And when comfort exists, fear disappears. Performance is another silent factor. Modern Windows installations often come bundled with background services, ads in the start menu, promotional notifications, and pre-installed apps you didn't ask for. Over time, systems feel heavier. Updates interrupt your workflow. Restarts happen at inconvenient moments. Linux distributions, by contrast, often feel lean. They boot quickly. They consume fewer resources at idle. They don't force reboots for routine updates. That feeling of lightness leaves a strong impression. When a 5-year-old laptop suddenly feels new again under Linux, it becomes difficult to justify sticking with a heavier alternative. Privacy concerns also play a role. Users are becoming more aware of data collection practices. They read about telemetry. They notice personalized ads. They question why an operating system needs constant cloud connectivity. Linux offers a simpler story. It's open. Its code is visible. Its communities are vocal about transparency. While no system is perfect, the perception of control matters deeply. When users feel like they are in charge, rather than being observed, trust grows. And trust is something Windows has struggled to maintain in recent years. The update model is another area where Linux has quietly outpaced expectations. Instead of massive, disruptive updates that overhaul your system twice a year, many Linux distributions deliver incremental improvements. You update when you choose. You see exactly what's being installed. In some cases, updates happen in seconds and require no reboot at all. That predictability feels respectful. It respects your time. It respects your workflow. Over time, those small moments of respect build loyalty. Community support, once seen as intimidating forums filled with cryptic advice, has matured as well. Documentation is clearer. Tutorials are more accessible. Video guides walk you step by step through common tasks. And because Linux has grown in popularity, you're less likely to feel alone when troubleshooting. The knowledge base is enormous. Ironically, even when Windows users search for solutions to Windows problems, they often land on forums powered by open-source software running on Linux servers. The ecosystem influence runs deep. There's also the matter of cost. While Windows licenses are often bundled into hardware purchases, they are not truly free. They are baked into the price. Linux distributions, on the other hand, are typically free to download and use. For individuals, students, startups, and organizations operating on tight budgets, that difference matters. When you can revive older hardware without purchasing new licenses, the value proposition becomes compelling. Ease plus zero cost is a powerful combination. Corporate adoption has shifted perceptions as well. Linux is no longer viewed as a hobbyist experiment. It runs critical infrastructure worldwide. It powers cloud platforms. It drives enterprise servers. When people realize that the same foundation running global data centers can also run smoothly on their personal laptop, confidence grows. It doesn't feel like a fringe choice anymore. It feels established. Another subtle shift lies in design philosophy. Windows has increasingly pushed users toward ecosystem locking cloud accounts, proprietary formats, subscription services. Linux distributions tend to emphasize interoperability and open standards. Files are accessible. Formats are flexible. You're not pressured into a specific cloud provider or productivity suite. For users who value digital independence, that openness feels liberating. Even laptop manufacturers are starting to experiment with shipping devices preloaded with Linux. That changes everything. When consumers can buy a machine that just works with Linux from day one, the intimidation factor disappears. The experience becomes as seamless as buying any mainstream device. Pre-installation removes the final technical hurdle for non-technical users. And let's talk about customization. Windows allows some personalization, but it operates within boundaries. Linux, while now easy by default, still retains deep customization potential. The difference is that customization is optional. A new user can ignore it entirely and enjoy a stable, polished environment. An advanced user can transform the system into something unrecognizable. This dual identity is simple on the surface, powerful underneath, incredibly rare in software. It satisfies both beginners and experts without alienating either group. Security perceptions also influence decisions. Linux's permission model, package management system, and rapid patch cycles contribute to a reputation for resilience. Malware targeting Linux desktops is far less common compared to Windows, largely because of market share but also due to architectural differences. For everyday users, the sense that their system is less likely to be bombarded by viruses or intrusive pop-ups is reassuring. The educational landscape has embraced Linux more openly as well. Programming courses, cybersecurity training, and development environments often rely on Linux-based systems. Students exposed to Linux early in their learning journey become comfortable with it. When those students later choose personal systems, they don't see Linux as foreign, they see it as familiar. Over time, generational familiarity reshapes market dynamics. The rise of remote work has also leveled the playing field. When your office tools are web-based and your meetings happen in cross-platform applications, your underlying operating system becomes almost irrelevant. Compatibility barriers shrink. The question shifts from, will my job allow this, to, does this meet my needs? For many, the answer is yes. Perhaps the most dramatic change is psychological. Linux no longer feels like rebellion, it feels practical. Choosing Linux used to make a statement. Now it often feels like common sense. When practicality replaces ideology, adoption broadens. People don't switch to make a point. They switch because it works. And here's the twist. When Linux becomes this accessible, Windows loses its defining advantage. The argument used to be, Windows is easier. If that statement is no longer universally true, then what remains? Brand familiarity, default installation, legacy software. Those are powerful factors, but they're not insurmountable. Once users realize that Linux can handle their daily tasks without drama, inertia becomes the only barrier. Inertia is strong, but it's not eternal. Every time someone installs Linux on an old laptop and is surprised by how smooth it feels, a seed is planted. Every time a gamer discovers their favorite title runs flawlessly, another assumption crumbles. Every time a student completes assignments without touching Windows, the dependency weakens. Linux becoming too easy doesn't mean it has lost its soul. The open source ethos remains intact. The communities remain passionate. The freedom to inspect, modify, and share code remains fundamental. What has changed is the entry point. The door is wide open now. You don't need secret knowledge to walk through it. This evolution raises fascinating questions about the future. If operating systems continue converging in usability, differentiation will hinge on philosophy rather than convenience. Do you prefer a closed ecosystem optimized for monetization, or an open ecosystem optimized for flexibility? Do you want curated simplicity with strings attached, or community-driven simplicity with transparency? As Linux reduces friction, these philosophical questions move to the forefront. We are witnessing a subtle power shift. Not an overnight collapse, not a dramatic overthrow, but a gradual erosion of a long-standing assumption. The assumption that Windows is the safe, easy choice. Safety and ease are no longer exclusive qualities. They are shared territory now. For content creators, developers, gamers, students, and everyday users, the calculus is changing. The experiment that once required courage now requires curiosity at most. Download an image, boot from USB, click install. That's the barrier. That's it. When the barrier shrinks to almost nothing, more people cross it. And once they cross it, many realize something surprising. They don't miss what they left behind. Their files open, their apps run, their games launch, their systems feel responsive, their updates are calm and predictable. The dramatic narrative of sacrifice fades away. Linux becoming too easy is not a flaw. It's a milestone. It represents decades of refinement, collaboration, and persistence. It reflects thousands of developers choosing usability as a priority rather than an afterthought. It demonstrates that open source software can compete not only in power, but in polish. The Windows advantage was never about technical superiority alone. It was about accessibility. Now that accessibility is no longer unique, the playing field looks very different. Choice becomes genuine rather than theoretical. So here we are in a moment that feels strangely quiet, but profoundly significant. Linux has crossed the threshold. It is no longer the complicated alternative. It is simply an alternative. Sometimes even the simpler one. And when the underdog becomes approachable, when the once intimidating option becomes inviting, the balance shifts. The question is no longer whether Linux can be easy. It already is. The real question is how long it will take for the broader public to notice that the old advantage has quietly disappeared.